There's a moment that feels strange when it first happens. You stop looking for meaning, not because you've found it, not because you've given up, but because the question itself loses urgency. You don't wake up wondering what this is all for. You don't feel driven to make sense of everything. You're not actively searching for purpose. And that absence can feel unsettling, because for a long time, the search for meaning may have organized your life. It gave direction to your choices. It gave weight to your experiences. It helped you endure difficulty. Meaning was something you were supposed to uncover, something hidden beneath the surface of life. So when meaning stops asking to be found, it can feel like something essential has gone missing. But often, nothing has. What's changed is the role meaning plays. For much of life, meaning lived in the future. You believed things would make sense later, after the lesson, after the growth, after the struggle paid off. Meaning was deferred. It was something you earned through effort, reflection, or endurance. And that belief helped you keep going. But at some point, that structure weakens. You notice that even when things do make sense, the satisfaction doesn't last. The insight fades. The clarity passes. The search returns. So you search again. But eventually, something shifts. You realize you're tired of extracting meaning. Tired of turning every experience into a lesson. Tired of asking what something says about your life. And quietly, the question relaxes. What does this mean? Becomes, this is what's happening. That shift can feel confusing, because meaning was never just intellectual. It was emotional. It gave life a sense of importance. So when you stop asking for meaning, you might worry that life will feel empty, flat, insignificant. But often the opposite happens. Life becomes simpler, not dramatic, not profound in the way we're taught to expect, but grounded. Meaning stops asking to be found because it's no longer hiding. It's not waiting to be discovered behind experience. It's already present in experience, but only when you stop interrogating it. This doesn't happen because you've become wise. It happens because the effort of searching no longer feels necessary. You may notice this in ordinary moments. You're doing something simple, washing dishes, walking, listening, and there's no commentary. No need to label the moment. No urge to turn it into insight. You're just there. And that feels enough. Not exciting, not inspiring, but complete. This is often where people become uneasy, because we're taught that meaning should feel big, transformational, life-altering. If meaning feels quiet, we assume it doesn't count. So when meaning stops asking to be found, people may say things like, I don't feel inspired anymore. I don't know what my purpose is. I'm not searching like I used to. Those statements sound like loss, but they're often describing relief. Relief from the constant pressure to make life say something, to prove something, to justify itself. When meaning stops being hunted, life stops being interrogated. And that changes how you relate to difficulty. Difficulty no longer has to teach you anything. It doesn't need to improve you. It doesn't need to justify its existence. You meet it as difficulty. Sometimes you learn from it. Sometimes you don't. And both are allowed. This can feel disorienting if you've built your resilience on the idea that pain must be meaningful, that suffering must produce growth. When that belief softens, pain becomes simpler, not easier, but less burdened. You're not carrying the extra weight of turning pain into progress. You're just responding. Meaning stops asking to be found when life no longer needs to be explained. Not to yourself, not to anyone else. You may notice that you're less interested in narrating your experiences, less interested in personal stories, less interested in framing your life as a journey. This doesn't mean you've lost depth. It means depth no longer needs a storyline. You're not shallow, you're direct. This also changes how you relate to joy. Joy no longer has to mean something. It doesn't need to confirm that you're on the right path. It doesn't need to last. It appears, passes, and that's enough. You don't cling to it. You don't worry about losing it. You don't try to interpret it. You enjoy it while it's there. And when it's gone, life continues. Meaning without searching is gentler. But because it's gentler, it's often overlooked. We're used to meaning being intense, something that grabs us, something that motivates us. But meaning that doesn't ask to be found doesn't grab. It settles. It's woven into the ordinary, into showing up, into contact, into attention. This kind of meaning doesn't point anywhere. It doesn't tell you who to become. It doesn't demand action. It doesn't promise fulfillment. It simply exists alongside experience. And that can feel unfamiliar if you've been chasing meaning your whole life. You may worry that without the search, life will feel empty. But emptiness is what shows up before this shift, not after. The emptiness comes from exhausting yourself with searching. When the search stops, life often feels fuller, but quieter. Not full of answers, full of presence. Meaning stops asking to be found because it's no longer something you're missing. It's not something you add. It's not something you achieve. It's something that appears naturally when you stop demanding more from life than what's here. This doesn't mean you'll never wonder about meaning again. Questions still arise, but they don't dominate. They pass through. You don't build your life around them. You don't delay living until they're resolved. This season isn't about rejecting meaning. It's about noticing what happens when meaning stops being a project. When you stop searching, life doesn't collapse. It continues, and in that continuation, meaning appears in small, unremarkable ways. Ways that don't announce themselves. Ways that don't need to be shared. Ways that are easy to miss if you're still looking for something bigger. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, if you don't feel driven to search anymore. If insight feels less important than contact. If life feels quieter but not empty, you haven't lost meaning. You've stopped chasing it. And that's not a failure. It's a shift. One that doesn't come with fireworks or certainty. Just a subtle sense that nothing is missing. If this reflection helped you feel less uneasy about not searching for meaning the way you used to, you're welcome to stay with the season as it continues. Liking the video helps it reach others who think they've lost purpose when they've simply stopped interrogating life. And if someone you care about feels worried because they're no longer searching, you're welcome to share this with them, only if it feels right. Meaning doesn't always ask to be found. Sometimes, it waits quietly for the search to end.